Good evening. This is the November 17th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The time is 6 o'clock. Our first order of business tonight is to convene into our work session where we'll be reviewing the cases. We'll then reconvene into general session at 6:30. So with that, I will convene into our work session.
Yep, we're on.
Okay, so I guess we'll start tonight with the calling of the roll. Amy, do you want to call the roll, please? I guess I'll start. I'm the chair, Commissioner Edmund Haas. I'm present. Vice Chair Portman?
Present.
All right, commission members Sue Blankenship?
Present.
Cindy Bishop?
Present.
Fred Guerra? Ed Marr?
Present.
And Jim Walker?
Present.
Okay. Congratulations to Cindy, Jim, and Freddie for the return to the commission. Look forward to working with you over the next at least year.
Thank you.
All right. We'll first review the items on the agenda, and I'll turn it over to Mary Prone Boswell to lead the staff introductions and the cases.
So myself, Mary Prone Boswell, senior planner. Then we have Matt Steer, who serves as advisor, coordinator, administrator, all of the above. Kami McGee, Shelby Fletcher, over in admin. We've got Cole Baker, with engineering. I think that's it. Mike is on his way.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Bob Hager is joining us this evening, city attorney.
Welcome. All righty, Mary. So what do we got tonight?
All right, so the first item, Mr. Steer can go over.
Okay. Item number 6 is firehouse subs. So they're going in the Braywood Center, and it does require a special use permit because it does have residential adjacency. So it's if anyone's been to a firehouse, it's a long, narrow lease space. They've got 16 seats. They meet the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance. They were granted a 50 parking space exception by the Board of Adjustment.
That was the development.
The development as a whole. So the site has 179 parking spaces, and they're only required to have 176. So they meet the parking requirements, and I'll go into the signage and hours of operation after that.
What was the previous use?
Previous use, not absolutely. It wasn't a restaurant. It wasn't a restaurant.
Just retail?
Yeah.
Okay.
So any questions about firehouse subs?
The firehouse, we have a colored logo, but under the new signage requirements, as long as it's a formal logo, color is allowed. This will probably be the first color logo in the shopping center, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mary?
All right. So the next item, or a few items, will be mine. So they're all associated together. Item 7 is a public hearing for a zone change request at the corner of Bethel and Main Street. So essentially what we're looking at that location, there is an existing, or two existing buildings there, former church and former education center. This proposed development will have 6 buildings take that corner, so 6 individual lots. So what we're looking at this evening is just the zoning. So we're not looking at what is gonna happen with these buildings. That is not part of your purview this evening.
When did that condition come in?
So that condition came in this morning, so we talked with our city attorney. So there will be an additional condition, number 17, that you'll see come up once we get to the recommendation.
Okay.
So basically, it'll say, I just want to read it here. The demolition or removal of the buildings shall require city council consideration. So what we need you guys to focus on this evening is, are you in favor or not of the requested zoning for that piece of property? So, like I said, there's 6 buildings. There's a corner one that will be strictly commercial, both upstairs and downstairs. The other buildings will have a combination of either office or retail on the first floor, and then the residential component on the second floor, the upper floor. So this is different, it's not a live-work unit. So the difference being, with a live-work, the person who lives upstairs also works downstairs. The mixed use is different in terms of those two people could be different. So you could have someone living upstairs, totally different operator of a business downstairs. They'll have separate entrances, so it doesn't have to be the same person who owns the building living there, etc. So that's the subtle difference. There's some building differences as well when you do that type of operation.
Harry, when you do that, is the retail nonetheless required to be on the ground floor?
Right, so the retail is going to be on the ground floor and the residential upstairs.
You couldn't mix them?
The way the Old Town master plan shows is they want the retail on the ground
Okay.
floor.
Good.
Alright. So this, what they're proposing does meet with the Old Town or Old Coppell master plan. So the master plan showed this particular area as a mixed-use retail and service concentration. Obviously, the plan is, a little bit older, so there is flexibility built into it. It talks about it being flexible depending on how the market conditions are. So we talked to the applicant in terms of they wanted to do more office, and we said, well, really it's more of a retail is what we're looking for. So it's a combination of half office, half retail. So with this proposal, we've got, like I said, 6 buildings that line Bethel and come down Main. Behind it, there's a parking lot proposed. In addition to that parking lot, there's some on-street parking already existing that will be essentially assigned to this development. One of the conditions is that lot 7, which is the parking lot. Typically, we require some kind of street access for lots. That lot 7 doesn't have street frontage, so the access will be coming through the city-owned parking lot that's just south of it. So we'll have to work. They'll have to work with the city in terms of making that connection, getting an access easement, kind of relocating the irrigation system there for the trees and stuff that are there. So originally this piece of property was not in the original Old Town concept plan. So what we're looking at with this is to bring it into the Old Town concept plan, and with that be part of the Old Town Property Owners Association. So the Property Owners Association would be have to pick up on the maintenance of the sidewalks, any benches, trash facilities, bicycle racks, etc. And this, would make it, this is what we would prefer, because then it will make everything kind of match, be on the same schedule for landscaping, etc. So in terms of their landscaping, they are proposing 6 buildings. The majority of the landscaping is focused up front, so street side. So they'll have trees, shrubs, ground cover, etc. And that's, like I said, focused on the street side, because that is where people will be coming in, people will be driving by. In between the buildings, there's going to be a 4-foot sidewalk. So it's a private sidewalk to allow people to go, in between buildings, go to the parking lot, etc. And that'll all be under the care of the POA. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at the different elevations. So the buildings range anywhere from about 27 feet up to about 34.5 feet. So well within the 35-foot height limit that is allowed in Old Town. So they kind of stagger or step as you go from one end to the other. The majority of the buildings do have some kind of porch component or balcony component. They'll all have like an arts and crafts style garage door at the rear. There is at least 2 garage spaces provided for those units that do have a residential component to it. Most of the buildings are like the cement fiberboard material. There's some stone, wood. The building at the corner has like a wraparound porch with a turret at the corner. We've worked with them in terms of the colors of the buildings so that they do match the Sherwin-Williams historical palette. Let's see here.
So I take it the garages are only accessible to the resident upstairs?
Correct. So we did send out notices, about 17 within the 200 feet as required by state law, and then another 140 within 800 feet as a courtesy. In terms of the actual notices that we sent out, we got 2 back from, one from Mr. Chaddick, who owns the property across the street as well, in favor, and then another one from one of the neighbors. Just so you know, there is a petition. We're made aware of a petition that's going around. Last time I checked, I think it had about, so the petition is to save the buildings. I'll just put that. And the last time I checked, it was about 425 signatures. Am I running out of time?
Memory full.
Our work is
Change
done.
the tape.
Our work is done here.
Stop this
Yes.
meeting until we get more memory.
It's
Shucks.
So, but I did receive some additional emails between me and Matt. So I've gotten, between emails and phone calls, about 35, let's see, about 36. So roughly half in favor, roughly half opposed, and really it's more about the buildings themselves. So I can hand that out if you guys want to read it. I have,
Are the comments about the removal of the historic building or the types of buildings that are proposed?
more about the buildings that exist there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about wanting to preserve the buildings and Old Town character. So,
But that's not what we're considering here right now.
correct.
Okay. And the
Now, do any of
application,
these buildings, Mary, have historical designations on them now?
So, historical designation in terms of the Historic Society did a survey back in early 2000s, and they did identify the two buildings. So the first one, the former church building, is identified as A, which is, I think, architecturally and historically significant. And then the other building on site is a priority B, which is historically significant. To my knowledge, neither one of these buildings is on like a Texas registry or a national registry.
Okay, that's the question.
Yeah. So we can ask the owners, but I wasn't able to find anything saying that it's on a national or state registry.
So Mary, was this rezoned at some point? I'm assuming it was, because it didn't start out as historic.
I would have to check. I'm not sure what it was previously. You know, Matt?
Yeah, I'm not absolutely sure, but what we had was in 2002, or around in that, we had a historic overlay district that was adopted. And then in 2005, we adopted a historic district, but took away the overlay, and it's just a standalone district now.
Okay.
And really, the historic district really calls for commercial type uses. So if you want to do residential, you have to actually go and get a special use permit
Okay.
or a PD. So it is meant for commercial uses in the historic district.
So Matt, when the overlay was done, what's the process with that? Like the current owners, do they have to? Is it a unilateral thing, or what's the process with the actual property owners? Because I assume that was probably when Old Town was being developed.
Yeah, if I can remember, I think the overlay districts, so what we had was, a brick requirement for the whole city, and we had concrete for the driveways. And so this overlay district allowed for asphalt in Old Town and also allowed for the siding component. They were sort of like exceptions that would be granted in whoever had the overlay.
Okay. But did the current owners of the property have to opt into it, or was it? Did they?
No, it was a zoning
It was just
overlay
imposed.
district.
Council initiated rezoning
Okay.
to the historic district.
So the residential on the second floor,
Yeah,
it would either be leased or the person that owned the building would live up there.
right. So there's no requirement that the person who owns the building live there.
Mhm.
So it could be, yes, a tenant.
Right.
If they rent it out to.
Okay.
could it be, is it rented or are they selling? The second floor is rented, I presume.
Is it a condo or is it a
I
lease?
guess the owner. I guess they could kind of do it, because that's just a different ownership
Mhm, yeah.
tool. But there's no requirement in the ordinance that the owner live in the resident or the occupant of the retail or office be the occupant. So you could have, I could run it, she could run her business.
And I could own
be
it.
related.
And you could own it.
So like live, as explain, live work is, you work there, live there, one home.
But nobody's filed a condominium declaration for the property.
That we're aware of, no, sir.
Okay.
They're just trying to get through the zoning first. So there are, numerous conditions that we will be asking for with this request. Essentially, Some of them are pretty standard. You need a tree removal permit if you're gonna take down any trees. Additional comments from detailed engineering review. The one thing is that this property's never been platted, so also on the agenda tonight will be a preliminary plat and a final plat for it. The final plat, at some point, is to be filed at the county. The preliminary plat is not. So the plat won't be filed until, the buildings have been addressed in terms of relocated or what have you.
How's it gone this long without being platted? Like from the,
No one's developed it. It's never
I
been
mean,
built
in
yeah.
the 50s when it was reconstructed, or what, in 48?
You're assuming that we had
Ah, just asking.
a subdivision ordinance in 1953?
Fences.
Probably not.
Yeah, most
So
of
how
these,
do they have a survey that they're conveying it by then?
I don't know, that's condemned.
so a lot of the conditions just deal with, tree removal permit, coordinating with the city in terms of parking, allowing lot 7X to not have street frontage. In terms of the parking, they are building a parking lot at the rear. It's gonna have about, I think, 21 spaces. They'll have the garages and the units. There's the on-street parking along Main Street. And then additional parking because in the Old Town area, there is some additional parking that's been planned with the concept plan to allow for sharing of parking areas. So a total of, I think, 74 altogether for this development.
So looking at that lot 7X, so
Yeah.
the city, the easement would just be basically the two little driveways
Yeah.
into the parking lot?
Mhm.
Okay.
Are there any issues with parking down there now?
Not that I'm aware of. There's, like, even with this development, there's probably an extra 100 parking spaces still, like when it's fully built out. So, let's see here.
And with this zoning, either the previous or the current, it has to be mixed use. It can't be all retail or all residential.
So the one building at the corner will be all commercial, top and bottom. The way it's being requested is that the top be residential, and that's why we had them add the garages and everything.
But based on the current zoning, because it's zoned this, it can't be one or the other. It has to be mixed use.
They probably could have done something, but then there's other factors that kick in, like, you need more parking.
Right.
You need maybe some type of elevator, or there's other things that are triggered.
And then I know we're I guess not technically looking at this, but two things. One, from the materials and color standpoint, will it mix with the current Old Town? And then two, and this is probably because it's maybe just a preliminary site plan, but there wasn't any, like you said, I didn't see any ADA spots. Or I don't know where the closest ADA spots would be.
They get into that type of detail when it goes into, full engineering review.
Right. Yeah, that's what I assumed. Okay.
But normally it'd be in front of the building, right?
Yeah.
So probably the first couple of stalls in front of that retail will be
Yeah, so they may have to,
Doesn't
designate or restripe something for handicap, et cetera.
Yeah, the only reason that I ask is I think the one we had looked at a handful of months back where the ADA park seemed like they were quite a bit of a distance away, and so, but yeah, no, I get this is a preliminary plan, so. But from a materials and colors and matching standpoint.
Right, so it's from the
Okay.
Sherman-Williams historical palette. I'm sure Mr. Collins will say that we looked at the colors very much in depth. And then the materials, they are allowed to do that, the siding, and they did add, stone to some of the porch areas. The garages are like a craft, it's an arts and crafts style. The windows have the mullions in them, gabled roofs.
Yeah, they're compatible with the design guidelines of the district.
So what was the purpose of the historic district being implemented? I mean, because some of the complaints are saying that the historic district was to protect the older buildings.
Along Bethel. That was part of it.
Okay.
Because at the time, you have to remember, that was Carter Crowley soccer practice field,
Oh,
and
yeah.
softball field.
Yeah, I was out there a few times.
I know. My kids
Every Saturday.
played soccer and softball there, so really the focus was on like Mr. Shirley's barber shop and Jean's building and the water tower that was ground storage water tank that's in the back there, and then those buildings along Bethel. Because we really didn't have the district that we have now.
Right, in the current zoning ordinance, the current historic district,
Mhm.
we listed the general purpose and description. It says the historic district's intended to provide special development standards compatible with the unique character of Old Coppell as defined herein, preserve and enhance the area's special historic, architectural, and aesthetic features, ensure that new construction and alterations to existing structures are compatible with the unique character of the area, provide an area for living, shopping, dining, working, recreation, and entertainment, and then to promote pedestrian activity within Old Coppell to encourage an atmosphere of a bygone era. Thank you.
That was impressive, man.
That's great. That's great.
So, yeah. So they'll have a POA, they'll join hopefully the POA for the Old Town area, and it'll, help maintain everything on that property. The last two items, because I know we're running out of time.
Oh,
are-
can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry. So on the buildings that are retail on the first floor and residential on the second floor,
Mhm.
can there be a restaurant on the first floor with a special use permit?
I'm gonna say no, because it requires more parking. They'd have to come back here.
You'd have to come back through the
Yeah.
process, because the parking
Right.
requirement would dictate that they would need an amendment to the PD.
Because retail is not restaurant. It's a different use
Oh.
altogether.
Okay.
It's more
What-
intense. It
what-
would require
Right,
more-
I was trying to find it in the ordinances this weekend to answer my own question, because it looked like you could ask for a special use permit for retail to make
But
it a
at
restaurant.
the end of the day, it's just an amendment to the PD.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
another
So
use that gets
it's
added in.
possible because we have a bunch of parking lots.
Yeah, yeah.
Around.
It's in the right
It is.
kind of restaurant,
Right.
that
Like we used to
doesn't
have that cupcake place that's now out of business next to Twisted Root.
Right.
Well, I don't know what was on top of that, but. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, in terms of, it's possible, but you couldn't just move in, is what I'm.
Right, right.
Yeah, because it's for retail. You have to go through that zoning.
Yeah, we get staff's recommendation.
Any concern on traffic? Zero? Net increase in trips is
Around 35.
peak hour? No. Okay.
There's not much traffic in Old Town.
No.
Just
We
ask.
have a problem. And a parking problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last two items are the preliminary plat and the final plat. Basically setting up what the lot's gonna look like. The final plat at some point, would get filed at the county. It needs to get filed before they can start construction. All right, any last minute questions?
Is George also zoning retail on the first floor and residential, and now it's office too, right? Residential
Right.
and office on the second floor?
Yes, so that's gone through a couple iterations.
Yeah.
Yeah, they amended it to add the second floor office.
I have a note, L1-33, is that a drawing? Does that ring any bells? Do you, Mary?
Landscape plan.
Yes, that's what it
L13?
is. Yeah.
It is L11 is the landscape plan. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry.
Because it says like, for example, 8,400 square feet required, 8,649 square feet provided. So that means it's less than what's required?
That's more.
No, it's more. What would be required and what they're providing. They're providing.
They're providing 5,649 and required is 8,400. So the 8,400 is greater than the.
Okay.
I might have
Yeah,
misspoke.
yeah, well, so there's three categories of landscaping, and so, in the Old Town District, we allow for them to not provide actually what's required for one of the categories, as long as they're, providing streetscaping along the frontage, and I think their overall percentage
Yeah, because
is.
on the open space landscaping, they are providing a lot more than what's required. So it kind of evens out.
Because the buildings are closer and a lot smaller.
It's pushing it out. So that's fine.
Are these buildings closer than the other existing structures on Main, like the Cupcakery and whatever the other ones are?
They're the same distance between.
Same, okay.
They're tight, but they're 4 feet.
And this process started with this applicant when? September? August?
I think earlier in the year.
Okay.
'Cause I think they,
Couple times ago.
Yeah.
Was it a couple months, and then it was pushed last month.
yeah, it's been pushed
In
a
June.
couple times.
Okay, so I guess the only thought I would have for the commission as we deliberate, that we be thinking about if we can make a decision one way or the other, up or down, try and get to that conclusion tonight. So,
But either way, because this is a planned development, even without the rezoning, it would still come through P&Z.
Say that again?
Would it's, even without a rezoning, because it's a planned development already, it would
Well,
still have to come through P&Z?
It's not a planned development.
They want to annex it in.
They want to annex it in. It's becoming a planned development.
The issue is,
Okay.
with regard to the building, either the removal or demolition of the building is required to come through you.
Okay,
So if the current owner wanted to demolish or remove the building, technically it has to come through you to get approved,
but because
which is really a separate issue.
But because tonight it's a condition
Then you take your
that's
thing,
being
you
pushed,
remove it to the council.
to the council, okay.
Along with the
So
zoning.
that will address that permanently,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Quick question, does Old Town Coppell have like an Old Town Economic Development Committee or something who would provide input on whether they support this?
There's a POA, like the Property Owner Association.
Did you get any feedback from them?
Yeah, I did talk to the current president, and, they were interested in having this become part of the POA.
Okay, thanks.
I think they just need to work out the details.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, the time is 6:34, and I will adjourn the work session. Maybe a quick break before we reconvene in the general session? All right, so let's say 6:40? All right.
yeah, the reason I asked Larry is just because of where it's listed as current.
righty, good evening. The time is 6:41, and we are reconvening into general session. Our first order of business is to review the minutes. I'm sorry, is citizens' appearance. Is there anybody who'd like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will move on from citizens' appearance. Item 5 on the agenda is to consider approval of our October 20th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes or a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the October 20, 2022 minutes be approved as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Blankenship. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
All right, very good. Item 6 on the agenda is a public hearing to consider approval of S-1264-C, that being Firehouse Subs, a zoning change request from commercial to special use permit number 1264-commercial to allow a 1,200 square foot restaurant with approximately 16 seats and a pickup service located at 150 South Denton Tap Road, Suite 111, at the request of Michael Hirschman of Eagle Braywood, and being of Eagle Braywood, and the staff report by Matt Steer. Matt?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. This is item number 6 this evening. It's located in the Braywood Shopping Center on the east side of South Denton Tap. This 35,000 square foot shopping center was constructed in 1984 and is occupied with a variety of office, retail, personal service, and restaurant uses. This request is to allow a Firehouse Subs restaurant to occupy a 1,200 square foot lease space. And given that this lease space has never been used for food service use and it has residential adjacency, a special use permit is required. So Firehouse Subs is a franchise of over 1,200 restaurants, and it's available for dining in or carry out. The proposed hours of operation are 10:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the floor plan indicates seating for 16. Restaurants are required to be parked at a ratio of 1 parking space per 100 square feet. Therefore, this would require 12 parking spaces. This retail center was granted a special parking exception in 2014 based on the mix of uses, and it was a 50 parking space variance for the entire shopping center. So the site has 179 existing parking spaces, and they're only required to have 176, so they're meeting their parking needs. The Firehouse Subs sign is proposed to be individually mounted white channel letters on a red 4-inch deep backer panel with yellow returns, and there's an oval-shaped black panel proposed with the, that's a little closer up, with the verbiage subs in yellow lettering, and this design is allowed and will be different from the other signage in the center because it's a trademarked logo. So the lease space has a width of 19 foot 6 inches. Therefore, this sign's allowed to be 19.5 square feet. We sent out 27 notices within 200 feet, received one letter in opposition stating that they didn't want another food establishment in this center because they attract rats and mice. And we sent out 175 notices within 800 feet. Didn't receive any response on those. And staff is recommending approval of S-1264C Firehouse Subs, subject to, 1, the hours of operations shall not exceed 10:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. An external grease trap will be required, a minimum of 1,000 gallons, and there will be additional comments at the time of building permit. That concludes my remarks to the applicants in the audience. If you have any questions, thank you.
Very, very good, Matt. Thank you. Question, so the special variance was granted in 2014, so we're talking 8 years now. Have there been any complaints on parking issues or anything at the site?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions by the commission of staff? Cindy?
So we had that comment about the rats and the mice. If someone were to have a complaint, would they call the city about that? Is it the city's job or?
They could call code compliance or animal control possibly, but it sounds, if they knew that it was coming from the shopping center. Is that right? Health and code. Right, health and code enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by the commission? Cindy? I'm sorry, Sue?
No worries. So since this is going to be a restaurant use, for the trash, because this kind of speaks a little bit to the mice and the rats, but where is their trash enclosure? Where does that reside in here? Because I don't know that there's currently one there.
I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Jim, you good? Okay. Okay, very good. I would like to point out, and I failed to mention or introduce, that our city attorney, Bob Hager, is in the audience. That's who Matt was talking to here a moment ago, just so that you all know that our city attorney is here. Okay, is the applicant here to present the case? If I could get your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Hirschman. My address is 8117 Preston Road, Suite 300, Dallas, Texas, 75225.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for taking the time to consider this evening, as Matt, and thanks to Matt for his help on our application. As Matt stated, we've come before you several times and have appreciated your help and cooperation in years past. We're here tonight, as Matt said, to ask your approval of this SUP for 1,200 square foot Firehouse Subs. The owner of Firehouse, this location, Ryan Franklin, is here with me and would, I'm sure, be happy to entertain any questions that you would have for him. To address the question about dumpsters, we have 2 dumpsters are located in the northeast corner of the property. Several years ago, we built a big brick enclosure for those. They're serviced, I think, 5 times a week. In addition, we do have monthly external pest control, and our tenants and our restaurants are responsible for their own internal pest control. But almost all of them, particularly the restaurants, have monthly pest control service.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Are you in agreement with the conditions as presented by staff in the recommendation?
I believe that we are. Are you, Ryan?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? Okay, I do have a follow-up question. What
Yes,
was
sir.
the previous use of, I guess?
It was a farmer's insurance office.
So office to restaurant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a requirement, Matt, for scrubber? I remember that came up in another application for.
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion by the commission. Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that application S-1264-C Firehouse Subs be approved, subject to the staff conditions.
Okay.
Chairman, can we pause for a second? I have a question for staff before we.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Is the motion withdrawn? Okay, motion withdrawn.
Sorry. So Matt, in terms of the 1,000-gallon grease trap, is that the minimum that we require?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
minimum.
The only reason I ask is for that use. It seems large, but if that's the minimum.
Yeah, so that is the minimum.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions? All right. Is there a motion for the case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that matter S-1264-C Firehouse Subs be approved as submitted, subject to the staff conditions.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Marr. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So thank you for everyone coming out tonight. Thank you to the applicant here in this previous case. On to the next case. Hopefully you've signed in if you intend to speak. There's two color-coded sign-in sheets. One, if you'd like to speak, I think that's pink, and if you'd like to just have your name in for the record, it's green. So there was a change or an additional condition that came this morning. So basically what we're hearing tonight, and staff will discuss this in the presentation, but what we're hearing tonight is specifically the land use. We're not talking about renovation, relocation, removal of the building. So we're focused tonight on the land use. This is a condition that's going to be part of our motion to the City Council at the conclusion of our deliberation. So it's item number 17, I believe, on the amended staff report. I will open the case here, but I would like to notify that there was a request by one of our commissioners to go into executive session to ask some legal questions. So before I pull that in, I will open the item for public hearing. So this is item 7 on the agenda. This is the consider approval of PD-250R27-H, Main Street, Old Town, a zoning change request from historic to plan development 250 revision number 27-historic to add this property to the conceptual plan development for the Main Street Old Town project, removal of existing structures, creating 7 additional lots, 3 mixed-use office/residential, 2 mixed-use retail/residential, and 1 retail building, and 1 common parking lot on 0.946 acres of property located at the southwest corner of Main Street and West Bethel Road at the request of Chaddock Capital and Chaddock Management, and being represented by Greg Franca, GPF Architects. And the developer is Chris Collins. We have a staff report by Mary Perrone Boswell, but as mentioned earlier, we have the request to go into executive session, and with that, I'll turn it over to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, as a result of the request by one of the commission members, as authorized by Section 5510712 of the Texas Government Code, Agenda Item 7 is asked to be convened into closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney, and the time is
6:54.
So you'll recess our meeting here into executive session.
Yes, recess now, 6:54 into executive session, and we'll return promptly after our executive session.
Thank you.
scheduled, our regular session. We are at the point of the staff presentation, and Ms. Mary Peron Boswell will present the application. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. So item number 7, it's a public hearing for Main Street, Old Town. So this is a piece of property located at 509 Bethel Road. Currently, there are 2 structures on the site. According to the Historic Resource Survey compiled in 2006, there's a T-shaped building that was built in 1948. It was the Coppell Baptist Church, replacing the erected building in 1896. The other structure was an educational building, addition to the church that was built in 1953 and housed the kitchen, nursery, and Sunday school rooms. So the site has historic district zoning and is listed in the Historic Resource Survey as priority A for the church and priority B for the education building. So according to the survey, priority A is architecturally and historically significant, priority B is historically significant. The T-shaped church is a 1-story minimalist traditional structure that lacks decorative detailing but does have a front-facing gabled roof and front porch. The survey also lists the educational building as being constructed in the minimalist traditional style featuring wood construction, a front gabled roof, and a simple facade. To my knowledge, they are not registered on the Texas or federal historical registries. So I just wanted to bring this up this evening that there are buildings on the site. However, what we are discussing this evening will not be what happens with those buildings, but we're looking at the land use of that piece of property. So the zone change request is for the development that's being proposed. So in the Old Town, Old Coppell Master Plan, this area was listed in the Old Town Master Plan, and the master plan essentially said that, thank you. Sorry, I'm not talking loud enough. That the proposed plan, the master plan, should remain flexible to adapt to changing market conditions, as the proposed zoning will achieve the following land uses currently considered optimal. So in the master plan, it's showing that this area outlined in red should be a mixed-use retail and service concentration. Also, in the case of multi-storied buildings, office and residential uses are appropriate for the upper floors. So in terms of the land use proposed for this site, it currently contains the 2 buildings, as I mentioned. The site is just under an acre in size, proposed to have 7 lots containing 6 new mixed-use buildings and a parking lot. So as I mentioned during our work session, mixed use, meaning that the commercial and residential uses have separate entrances and can have separate occupancies. So it is not the same as a live-work unit. The live-work units have one owner occupancy, so they live upstairs and they work downstairs. In a mixed-use facility like this, you could have someone living upstairs and someone totally different renting or running their business on the ground floor. So what we're looking at here, buildings 1 and 2 will front West Bethel Road. They're proposed to be office on the first floor with residential above. Building 3 is located on the corner of Main and Bethel and will be retail both on the first floor and second floor. The next 2 buildings, 4 and 5, fronting on Main Street, will also have retail below with residential above, and the last building, building 6 on Main, on the south side of Main Street, will be an office with residential above. So these buildings will have a similar spacing as existing buildings to the south. The portion located on the residential portion located on the second floor will have a 2-car garage that has access from the rear. Lot 7X is the parking lot located or outlined in gray. It is not developable for a building lot, but will be used solely as a parking lot, and this is part of the PD conditions. A sidewalk will be built along Bethel Road connecting to Main Street, and there's also some internal sidewalks from the parking lot out to, in between the buildings, out to Bethel as well as Main Street, and these will be private sidewalks. So there's a little detail of the sidewalk easement. So there are no signs proposed for these buildings currently. So there was no signage package presented to staff. The next thing I'd like to discuss is parking for this site. It's going to be a combination, as I mentioned, garage parking for the residential uses. There's on-street parking that has already been constructed along Main Street, as well as parking on proposed Lot 7X, and 28 parking spaces from the existing public parking lot just south of this development. So a total of 74 parking spaces will be provided for this development. This site is also proposed to be added to the conceptual plan development for the Old Town Main Street project and become part of the existing POA for maintenance of the parking lot, amenities. Some of the amenities that are being proposed are benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, sidewalks between the buildings in the easements. So in terms of landscaping, there are some trees, I believe some crepe myrtles on the site that will be removed. There is a connection from this parking lot to the city parking lot on the south. So there will be an easement that's required and some relocation of irrigation lines to allow for that access easement. The developer will be putting additional overstory trees on the site. Per the landscape plans provided, they will provide some additional cedar elm, Chinese pistache, lacebark elm, Texas red oaks throughout the site. So the yards, a lot of the landscaping will be focused on the front yards, as that will be streetward facing. There are additional trees in the parking lot and around the perimeter as well. Per the developer, the POA will maintain all the landscaping on site. So roughly, the building lots have a range of about 32 to 36% landscaping. So the following renderings are of the proposed buildings on site. The top one is looking west Bethel towards the south, and the bottom rendering is Main Street towards the west. As I mentioned, the development will contain 6 buildable lots and share common design elements and materials. They are in compliance with historic district guidelines. Each of the buildings will be 2-story, with heights varying from roughly 27 feet to just under 35 feet. There's a color palette with shared colors in terms of the trims and soffits and the stones, as well as the roofing materials. There's a common shingle, brick, stone to be used in all the structures, as well as like I said, the accent colors. The siding and trims will be cement fiberboard, lap siding, a shingle look siding with wood or insulated steel front doors painted with painted to match the trim. 2-car garage doors will be decorative insulated metal in the arts and crafts style. More detailed information is provided in the next couple of slides. And all of the colors come from the Sherwin-Williams Exterior Historic Preservation Palette. So here's some additional perspectives. Top left is a bird's eye view to the southwest, so this is the corner of Main and Bethel. And then to the right, we have a bird's eye view to the northwest, so that's along Main Street, looking towards Bethel. We have Bethel towards the south, Main Street towards the west. The bottom center, you have the existing view on Main versus the proposed view on Main Street with this development. Just want to go over some of the elevations now. So for Building 1, which is on Bethel Road, the most westerly building, the color for Building 1 was a bungle house blue with trims and soffits in a classical white or light gray. The building is a combination of cement fiberboard, lap siding, and shingle look siding. Decorative brackets and decorative porch poles with a stone base. Building 2, which is an office building with residential above. The color for Building 2 is a Westchester gray with trims and soffits in a classical white or light gray. A cement fiberboard lap siding makes up the elevation materials. A front porch with standing seam metal roof with exposed rafter tails and painted tapered columns on the brick base. This will be carried over to the porch at the rear of the dwelling and will have a roof matching the main roof of the house. Architectural brackets will be located over the garage door and a second-story balcony in front of the buildings as well. Now, building number 3, this is the corner building, which will be retailed on both floors. It will be a downing earthen color with trims and soffits in a classic white or light gray, standing seam metal roof on the turret with a decorative finial and stone construction, a wraparound porch with decorative porch poles, a stone base located on the ground floor, a second-story balcony with wall sconces located on the eastern elevation with wood railings for all of the balconies and porch areas. So Building 4, which is on Main Street, retail below and residential above. The color for Building 4 is a downing stone with trims and soffits in the classical white or light gray, cement fiberboard siding with a combination of wood shingle look and a smoother looking siding, stone base for a portion of the front facade, and balcony on the second floor. Building 5, which is also proposed to be retail with residential above. The color for Building 5 will be a Roy Croft copper red, trims and soffits in the classical white or light gray, vertical cement siding with battens, a front porch with standing seam porch roof, and architectural brackets over the garage. And the last building, Building 6, which is proposed to be office with residential above. The color for Building 6 will be a rockwood blue-green with trims and soffits in a classical white or light gray, cement fiberboard siding with a combination of wood shingle look and a smoother siding, and a front porch with standing seam, stone base, and dormers on the roof. So again, just an overview of the houses and their location next to one another. So we did send out notices, 17 within 200 feet as required by state law, an additional 140 notices within 800 feet as a courtesy. So we did receive 2 responses in terms of the actual notices with the replied letters who were in favor. We did receive about 35 phone calls, emails with regard to this request, roughly half in favor, half not in favor. And I believe I was told there's a petition. I have not, I think the last time I looked at the petition, there was about 400 signatures on it. 700? Okay. I looked at it, I think, yesterday. So in terms of a recommendation, staff is recommending approval of the request with the following conditions. One, there may be additional comments during the detail engineering review. Two, a final plat is required and cannot be filed until the buildings have been removed and zoning is approved. Three, a tree removal permit will be required prior to construction. Four, this is more on the plans, just to update the quantity of the proposed plants. Five, to coordinate with the Parks Department for the removal of off-site trees and relocation of the irrigation south of Lot 7 to allow for access via the city parking lot. Number 6, Lot 7X, Block A, Main Street, Old Town Addition shall only be used for parking. Number 7, Lot 7X, Block A, Main Street, Old Town Addition will not have street frontage but will be accessible via an access easement which will be required between Lot 7X, Block A, Main Street, Old Town Addition, and the city of Coppell. Number 8, that the existing 15 parking spaces on Main Street in front of this development shall be accounted for this development. Number 9, existing 28 spaces in the Old Town area shall be counted towards this development. Number 10, the POA shall be responsible for maintenance of the common area, proposed Lot 7X, Block A, Main Street, Old Town Addition, and all landscaping. 11, all signage must comply with the H District ordinance requirements. 12, that Building 3 will not have any residential uses but may have a commercial occupancy on the second floor. 13, the maximum building height shall not exceed 35 feet above finished floor as required by the H District. 14, the POA shall maintain all amenities including benches, trash receptacles, bicycle racks, sidewalk easements between buildings, etc. 15, the POA shall maintain the private drainage easement. 16, the development must either join the Old Town Main Street POA or create a POA which will be responsible for amenities and conditions listed above. And since we did the staff report, we did add one additional condition. Number 17, that the demolition or removal of the buildings shall require city council consideration. So that is the end of my presentation. The applicant is here as well. And I think he has, oops. Oops. Sorry.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mary. Questions by the commission of staff? I have a couple. So with the staff recommendation of approval, Mary, we're saying that the proposed use is compatible with the historic district. It complies with the standards of the historic overlay, that everything aligns perfectly there, and we're comfortable with that.
Correct.
Okay. And the proposal, as it relates to the historic district, that's still consistent with the pillars of our Vision 2040 as a community, both
Yes,
from
sir.
whether the existing use stays there or the proposed use is approved?
Correct.
Okay. About 7, 8 years ago, the Coppell Deli, we had this similar issue where there was a structure, there were some elements that had some cultural value to the community. I think it was the awning, things like that. Are there any lessons learned from that whole process? Now that it's all said and done, is there any negative that resulted from that case to Old Town Coppell, or anything that we would do differently?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe with the Old Town Deli, they did take some of the elements from the existing building and incorporate them into the new structure.
Okay.
So I believe, maybe there's that opportunity with this project, maybe to take some of the elements that are existing in the building and incorporate them into the new structures.
Okay. All righty. Any questions of staff by the commission? Cindy?
The three adjacent cottages to the south, are they residential above as well?
I don't believe so. I think they're all just office or retail.
Okay.
I'd have to double check, but I don't think so. Matt confirmed they're not.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant here to present the case?
The applicant did hand me something that he would like handed out to all
Okay.
of you.
Okay.
So I will hand it down.
And if we could get your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
My name is Chris Collins. I live at 564 South Coppell Road here in Coppell, Texas. I'm a residential realtor with Keller Williams here in the area, a developer, and manage a hedge fund. I have with me Greg Franca.
Hi, Greg Franca, GPF Architects, 549 East Sandy Lake Road, Coppell, Texas.
Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, we were here about a year ago, and it's a very familiar feeling when I brought the first project to build 5 Live Works over on South Coppell Road. We had a hearing that went on for quite some time, but during that hearing, I think I showed that I'm a resident of Coppell. I'm also live and work here. My children went to high school here, and I am community oriented. And during that hearing, we had some opposition to the project that we proposed on South Coppell Road. I don't know if you remember that or not. Most of it had to do with parking and screening. And during that hearing, we were able to work out concessions with the people that were in opposition, and we ended up with a unanimous decision from the Planning and Zoning Commission to move forward. After that, when we went to council, we had opposition again, and the council tabled the vote. We went back, myself and Greg, met with the 11 to 12 people that were in opposition of the program, the plan that we had. We redrew it, met with them, brought their needs and their concerns to the table, addressed them, and then took it back to City Council, and 4 of the people that stood opposed came in favor of that project, and it was unanimously approved by the City Council. So once again, we're in a situation where we're finding some opposition to the intent to develop that last north corner or the south corner of Old Town to make it a little more viable. One of the passions that I have is helping business owners go from being a tenant to being a real property owner. That was the concept with our Live Works that we were building, so that businesses would quit enriching landlords and start building equity in their businesses. This project is along those same guidelines. We're wanting to create an environment where a business owner, small business owner, can purchase their building, own their building with a residential component if that works for them. So we have worked with both Matt and Mary, the city, on the project before, and intend to do the same with this project. So the elephant in the room obviously is the buildings. So the pamphlet that I'd put together for you is a timeline of my involvement starting in March when this project started. Matt and I and Greg met with the city, and there were 2 issues that we felt like were going to be the spotlight of this project. One was going to be parking, and we came up with a resolution to that by adopting into the Old Town PD so that we would have access to the additional parking there. The second one was obviously the church and annex. I was with the Chamber of Commerce when they were housed there, and as far as I know, that was the last time the building was used, the main building. I know that there's several businesses in the smaller annex that are still there. So with that in mind, I came up, and I think it was about March, I met with Chris Long to start discussing some options. So from day one, we've been on the track of preserving the building. I have personally offered up to $130,000 towards the move. One of the things that took place was I have additional properties that are under contract that I can potentially purchase that would be involved in this exact same scenario again. That would be the north corner of Bethel Road, which is the cottage hair salon that would be coming into question. I also have the property at 532 South Coppell Road, Jean Murph's old home, where she housed the newspaper, under contract to purchase. We are working hand in hand with the city to come up with a resolution to move these buildings to another location and use them in a environment where the public can have access. Nonprofit organizations can have reduced rent if they're using these buildings. So have been working hand in hand with the Historic Society here in Coppell to work through what would happen. On the very first idea of what we would do with the building, as Mary mentioned, the deli. The building has some really cool features. The interior of the building, if you have been in it, it hasn't changed. They have some tall, solid wood doors. We're looking at repurposing things such as the doors, the floors, the windows, the ceiling fans, the porch requirement. All of these buildings have a porch on the front. We thought it would be cool to incorporate the antique fans, the pews, shorten them as to put a bench on the porch, use the floors to where we could represent some of the items that came out of the church. There's a cedar wainscoting all the way around every room in the church. And just use some of those and then use placards to designate that these came from and have been repurposed. So it's kind of where we're at, and looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you for the background on all this. And you did meet with, have you met with the Historic Society? You met with the
Yes.
city, but you have met with the Historic. And what kind of response did you get there?
They appreciated the cooperation. It was the first person that had offered money to solve the problem. Came from us, the development side. Batted around ideas. They have currently a proposal that was, I guess, pitched to the city council last month. City council has not acted on that. A lot of that is the reason we'd like to see the decision of what happens to the buildings take place in a city council hearing.
Correct.
We have been patient with multiple requests to postpone coming before you guys.
Okay.
The first request to postpone started 60 days ago. Well, actually started at our initial submission we withdrew, so that the city and the city attorneys could work out the amendment to the PD. So our first 30-day withdrawal was at the very beginning. The second 30-day withdrawal took place when we were about 60 days ago. And then the city manager's office called and asked last month that I withdraw and postpone until this public hearing to give time for the city council to get a proposal together, present it to the city council for a resolution.
Okay. And then
We're willing, and I had a conversation with the city manager's office this morning, if it requires additional time after this hearing, we move forward to the city council public hearing. If more time is required and the city council asks for more time, the seller and I have come to an agreement that will give that time for the city to resolve this. I take this personally as an issue that needs to be resolved and worked out for the entire city. But at the same time, if this doesn't move forward, someone is going to develop it. As I've shown you guys before, as a developer, I do put the city and what's best for the city as a whole at the forefront of what we're trying to do in the development side. And if we don't, how long will it be before this question is asked again?
right.
So Matt has asked me, please don't do this again this year.
What is the cost to maintain those structures now? Is there
Which structures?
the existing structures on the property?
I have no idea. That would be a question for the owners, current owners.
Yeah. Just thinking about the removal and relocation, that cost. But okay, the live work on Coppell Road, the 5 that you
Yes,
built
sir.
there, they've been, I presume, fully leased, and are they?
No, we actually ran into some engineering complications after our December, or what was it, November approval by the city council. When we bought the product, we also replatted at a second time, so there was another 90 days added there. And then something happened with the economy and interest rates, but we just poured, all the grading's been done, the utilities have been installed, the parking across from Robertson on the South Coppell has all been in place now. So we're moving forward.
Okay. Questions of the applicant by the commission?
I had just a couple. And it might involve Mr. Franca too, so this would be directed to either one of y'all or both of y'all. So with respect to the site plan and the budget for relocating those the buildings, has that been done?
Yes.
Okay, and that would include the cottage hair salon and Gene Murph's home, as well as the two structures we're talking about tonight?
Yes, it's a total of 4 buildings. The annex, portion of the annex, in the beginning, we thought the entire annex was on a concrete slab, therefore it couldn't be picked up and moved. It was actually built in 2 phases, and so a portion of the annex would be picked up and moved that's on the pier and beam. The church structure, the cottage hair salon was included in that, and Gene Murph's house. So, once again, I don't own and control them, but this is where the intention is coming from.
Yes, sir. And is the thought that they would be moved down slightly east on South Coppell Road to that larger lot that's in front of the senior center?
Yes, sir, on Bethel Road, east on Bethel Road to the senior center.
So they would be combined in a way to kind of create a historic Coppell village of some kind?
I think that the idea that was thrown out in the discussions was something like Shiloh and Waco, Chip and Joanna Gaines facility down there.
We provided 3 alternate site plans. One's just moving the buildings in the corner, the northeast corner, and then another one that would start to create a whole master plan concept to bring the Old Town area off Houston Street and connect it to the senior center. You know, there's a sidewalk, curvilinear sidewalk through there now, but this would make a stronger connection between those 2 areas of the city.
Throughout this process, have you learned, are there any alternative plans for that particular plot that exist today?
I'm not aware of, and I've asked the question and never had an answer.
And would you be asking the city to fund the relocation then and the creation of that village? Or is it intended that the $130,000 that you're donating to the Historic Society would satisfy those costs?
It won't satisfy it. No, sir, that will not satisfy the cost of the entire project. And so that is a discussion that the city council is taking under consideration. Chris Long and I have had conversations about private funding, raising private funds in a matching type environment with the city.
Would it be possible, some type of GoFundMe, given the support that exists for these structures? I mean, there's now 700 people on the petition.
I would think a GoFundMe would do more positive than a petition.
Okay. And then I guess, so you're just donating $130,000 in good faith to the Historic Society, just as a show of good faith on your part?
Correct. And so somebody's got to start somewhere.
Thank you very much,
If I
sir.
create a problem, I want to try to be part of the solution.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Questions of the applicant? I do, Cindy, go ahead.
More like a comment. I feel like, I personally feel like there's a lack of restaurants in Old Town, and there could be more. Do you have any plans to attract restaurants to these buildings?
So here lies my dilemma. I have to present to you guys what we're going to do before we do it. In this case, and Matt, if I'm missing this, I need you to correct me. If a restaurant was to want to come to, say, the corner building on the corner of Bethel and Main, they would have to amend the PD or modify the PD in some way to come to you guys and say, hey, we want to put a restaurant there. It's my understanding, and Matt will correct me if I'm wrong, he's good at that. There is, the number 1 concern would be the grease trap. Number 2 concern would be parking. And so the parking requirement, I believe, is 150 square feet per parking space? No? 1 per 100. So there are additional parking spaces in the Coppell master plan that would meet the requirement should that building, at its final concept, we would take the square footage, we would know how many parking places are already allotted for it, and upon design, would have to present the square footage that would be in the restaurant and ask for additional parking, which is available in the Old Town PD. So is it possible? Yes. Obviously, as a realtor trying to sell these after we develop them, I would love the flexibility of bringing a restaurant. We've gotten a lot of feedback of, a restaurant, a deli, something of that nature. And we believe that the design that we've put in the corner building would meet that.
Anything else there, Cindy? You good? Okay. I do have a question regarding the density.
Yes, sir.
And I say that because as I walked the area on Saturday, it was a great day for a walk. I looked at all of the existing structures, particularly the structures on Main Street. They're two-story, but they're kind of built in within the cottage. It just feels like, and then around the other side on the west of the site, the three new, those are the single-story. It just feels like the proposal is just heavy. That we have 2 stories, then we have the roof and dormers. It just feels a little too heavy, and I'm just a little concerned that it's too much. Is there the ability to modify some of these, particularly on the ends, so that it maybe stair steps down and it flows a little better? I know the heights of the structures were 27, 30, 32, those were on Bethel, and then, on Main Street, the first one, or the last one adjacent to the first existing cottage was like 34, I think it was.
Okay, so when we had this when we came into this conversation in the beginning, density was an issue at 560 South Coppell Road. We spent a lot of time on. We crunched the numbers, and we came out to match the density. So I don't remember if y'all remember what all went on with that. The argument was they only wanted to see 4 buildings, and we showed that our density was actually less than the community around us. In this case, as this was discussed, and I believe Bob was in on this conversation, it helped us understand the buildings don't have to be this big.
Okay.
Several of the buildings in Old Town are smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we ask for a 2,000 square foot building that's 5 foot smaller and you approved it, we would have to go through this entire process again if the building that was desired to be built by the end user was larger. So we were advised to go with the larger building so that once they're permitted and these are going to be individually custom built, if they were smaller and we fit inside the box that's on the site plan, we're good. If it's any larger, we would go through this process again. So that is the purpose of the buildings being the size they are.
Okay.
From the clients that I've been talking to, I don't believe all of these buildings will be the size that we're looking at, but we have to start out larger and build smaller versus start out smaller and build larger.
I mean, I'm fine with the 2-story, but right next to the existing, it just kind of feels a little different. But I also get the point of the need to anchor the corner and those kinds of things. And I presume it's going to set the stage for what might happen across the street, et cetera. And I think buildings...
I'll let Greg take it.
Commissioner, plus we have 10-foot ceilings, first and second floors. First, we could lower that a little bit. And then it's common in arts and crafts to have a lower pitch roof. So instead of a 8 and 12 pitch, we call it, we drop it down to a 4 and 12 pitch. So that would lower the height of the building 4 or 5 feet. We could do that on building 6 and building 1 to kind of step it back down, like you had mentioned, and still keep the square footage.
Okay.
So there's ways to do that.
Good.
So it scales smaller.
Okay. I was thinking of switching building 5 and 6, because that was 5 was 28, 6 is 34. Then you got your existing structures, but sounds like that can be handled. Good, okay. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, we'll reserve the right to come back to you. Okay.
I'm sure.
So, thank you very much for the presentation. We will be going to the public hearing component. We had 2 sign-in sheets. Pink was you intended to speak. Green was you might not necessarily want to speak, you just wanted to acknowledge you were here. Anybody that signed green that wants to speak? I'll probably wind up calling the names anyway into record, so, okay. My understanding is that there's a 5-minute limit to speakers, so Cammie will have the clock. And what I'll do is I'll just go down the list. We'll start with those that requested to speak. Sarah Carrick will be first, and we have some others here. Sarah Carrick, and will be followed by Nathaniel Pugh. So, Sarah, come on down.
Okay, good evening. Sarah Carrick, if you need my information, I live at 123 Lodge Road. I own the Jacaranda Gift Shop, which is at 456 West Bethel Road, which is caddy corner to the proposed development. I'm just going to go ahead and read because then I can get it through quick and leave everybody else time to speak as well. As a Coppell resident of 25 years and a property owner of Jacaranda Gift Shop, formerly Coppell Decor and Harwell Barber Shop, I'm strongly opposed to the rezoning and planned development of this area for the following reasons. The City of Coppell approved the Old Coppell Master Plan in 2002 in an attempt to revitalise Old Coppell by attracting businesses and visitors to the area. The purpose of this master plan was to, and I quote, serve as a link to the past for the community. Since then, we have watched the Old Town Plan be circumvented through this exact process, the justification of an individual development with blatant disregard for the master plan for Old Coppell. We are now at the point where the only area of Old Town that is still made up of functional historic buildings is around the area of Bethel Road and Coppell and Main Road intersection. If we don't protect this southwest corner of Bethel and Main, a precedent will be set for the remaining corners of this intersection. This means in a matter of a few years, the essence of Old Town will cease to exist. While other cities like Louisville, Grapevine, and Carrollton protect and invest in their old buildings to maintain an authentic historical Old Town, Coppell, on the other hand, has gone in the opposite direction, approving PDs like this that tear down old buildings and replace them with fake old buildings, but yet still want to call it Old Town and market it as such. I purchased my property 6 years ago with the intent of maintaining the historic integrity of our building and the overall area at the request and encouragement of the City of Coppell. We've been held to and happy to abide by many of the original prerequisites listed in the Old Coppell Master Plan and design guidelines. The price we paid for this property was based on business potential, given that the City of Coppell had planned to develop the area as a retail, restaurant, entertainment destination. The people who shop and use the services of the businesses along Bethel Road are attracted to the old, authentic atmosphere. If you allow the development of this land as presented, and one would assume the northwest corner too, it will impact us in the following ways. Over the past 5 years, we have already seen foot traffic in Old Coppell decline due to many buildings becoming office spaces instead of a healthy and vibrant mixture of business types that draw in visitors. This planned development will again reduce the number of retail shoppers coming to the area that are attracted by the quaintness of the historic buildings along Bethel Road. If we lose the concentration of these historic buildings, our existing buildings will start to look out of place and immediately lose their appeal and value. The approval of this planned development is ultimately going to result in a financial hardship for me, and I would argue Joe Shirley's Barbershop, as well as Tattered Style and Coppell Barbershop, as we will ultimately have to sell to developers, conveniently, for land value only. In the last 48 hours, we have launched a petition to gather support to save these historic buildings from being moved or torn down. We have very quickly gathered almost 700 signatures and a lot of outrage and emotional response to the idea of another new building replacing one of our old buildings. In closing, I'd like to say that it's not about finding any developer for this area. It's about finding the right developer, someone who genuinely appreciates and values the history of Old Coppell, someone who is willing to invest in the area as is and not demolish history for their own personal gain. I've done it, Dana's done it, excuse me, and neighboring cities have all invested time and money. I would like to remind the Planning and Zoning Department and Commission that it is your responsibility to maintain the historic integrity of Old Coppell. The passing of this request will have far-reaching consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. So Nathaniel Pugh, and then we'll be followed by, I believe it's Dawn Pugh.
Dana.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for the chance to be here. My name is Nathaniel Pugh. My wife Dana and I have lived in Coppell for the past 24 years, raised our family here. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts. I'll do so with two quick stories and the lessons and how they might apply to this context. 5 years ago, Dana was working on the interior design of George's Coffee Shop, and we drove by one night and saw that the little Ivy Cottage was going out of business. And we thought, man, wouldn't that be cool to have this dream that she's always had of putting in a little shop where you have to go to Dallas or Fort Worth to find something like she had. So she leased it for 3 years. She didn't know if it'd work or not, but she thought, let's give it a shot. She did. Now, we stand 5 years later, we own the building. Not only do we own that building, we own the gas station next door to it. Not only that, the house behind it. We're invested in the community significantly. The point is, she didn't know if it would work. She signed it to give it a shot. And what we're hearing tonight is that you're going to have to buy this. You're going to have to buy the building, which means really deep pockets, which means the creatives, the artists, the people bringing something new and different to try something, to give it a shot, they're not going to be able to do this under this proposal here. They're going to have to buy it, and it eliminates all of those that the creators with ideas for new and fresh concepts. Restaurants and retail are the life of a town. Following through with the proposed demolition of these buildings will result in offices, as we've already seen. Not new restaurants, not unique retail shops. Can you think of one citizen of Coppell who wants more offices? Me neither. And yet this is exactly what this plan is designed to do. Do you know of Coppellians who would like more cool restaurants and a wider array of shops to choose from? Me too. The second story is repeated every weekend in tattered style. People come to shop from all over the Metroplex. And as we hear about if they talk about the shop, we tell them about this was the 1940s post office. People used to play dominoes outside of this. You know what they say? Every time. That's cool. We take them next door to the old building that looks like it was a gas station. We tell them it was never a gas station. It was a telephone exchange building, and then it was a laundromat owned by the Mitchells, who lived in the house behind it, and that's why the street's named Mitchell. How it used to be a state farm, and how we spent countless nights scraping plaster off walls, how we raised the ceilings and made it back to cinder blocks, and where people walk in and say, man, I wish I could live here. This is so cool. So if this proposal goes through, no one would ever say, hey, honey, let's go to Old Town Coppell today. They've got some new identical live-work office spaces we can go look at, and I've heard they've got a new doctor's office and a CPA and an insurance agency. Let's get the kids and go. Now, there's no guarantee that if you leave the old church and annex as it remains, that someone will come along and turn that into office space instead of the shops and restaurants as I envision. But if they do, and they tell the story of what it used to be and how it was restored, everyone will say, that's cool. So it seems to me that you all have to decide what story you want to tell. Do you want to tell the story of how you allowed a little bit of history and the soul of a town to be demolished and removed for a new, predictable office space? And I urge you today to keep the old church, keep the annex, and let someone with a vision and imagination bring life to it so that everyone will look at it and say, That's cool. Isn't that the story you'd like to tell? I just heard back in the session that the job of the Historical Society is to protect and enhance the bygone era. Well, let's do that. If the same amount of time and money that was spent doing all these wonderful designs was spent figuring out how to refurbish what we already have, that would be cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana Pugh, please, and then that'll be followed by Angela Lancaster.
Hi, I'm Dana Pugh. I live at 131 Winding Hollow Lane, and we moved here in 1998 specifically because we had 3 young boys, and we wanted to move to a location that had that small hometown feel and where we wanted to raise our boys. And so we did. We've been there ever since. And I'm nervous, so give me a second to collect myself. Feeling a lot of emotion. So I was working on George, the coffee shop. Our kids used to play in the fields there, played soccer there before the development. They went to the old church to sign up for to be in soccer and all, but I was working on George, and for the past 25 years I've done design work in the community, and that's been my primary business. And so I was working in George one night, and we drove by, like my husband said, and saw that the little place was coming up for lease. And so we decided that let's take that chance on that little building. I've always, for years and years, I've collected those one-of-a-kind finds that would make a place special and unique and all. I've kept them in storage, and it's like, why don't we put that in that sweet little, old post office and make a shop out of it? So the rest kind of is history. We've been there 5 years now. I think if you had paid visit to the shop, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it that we did. We're just modest, we're middle income residences, but we put a lot of heart into that building. And what I found just on a daily basis that is really special that I wish you all could see in that building is people come from all over. I have people come from Denton, Fort Worth, South Dallas, East Dallas. I've had people fly in, have come in from Austin, just because they love the quaintness and the charm of Old Town. As a matter of fact, they usually say, "Where's the rest of Old Town?" And I'm kind of like, well, this is it. And it's like, then why are they calling it Old Town if it's not Old Town? Because this is what we want to see. This is what, and we have a lot of people coming in from the airports because I am listed as a vintage and antique shop with handmade items as well by local artists. So they land on my porch, and they are they're asking, where is the rest of Old Town? What I also wish you could be witness to is the number of people that come in my shop and just say that they just want to, if they could just live here. And I'm sorry, speaking before a public, it's not my forte, so forgive me for that. I think the main thing that I want to get across is the heart of Old Town is those old little buildings. If those old little buildings go away, it's just not going to have the heart that it has the potential of having. I'll give you an example. Our oldest son got married in Blowing Rock, North Carolina over the summer, and we were back in the boonies, literally, and so we were visiting a place in Boone. It was the old Mercantile, and it was way, 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 way back up in the boonies. And what was amazing to me was that little Mercantile that was way far off from any place. People, they were coming by the droves to come to this historic, special, place that had heart. And I would just venture to say that Coppell has the potential of doing that. We can not only make an impression upon our city, I think as a metroplex, as a destination, and and we say, well, can we do it? Well, Old Town McKinney has done it, Carrollton's doing it, Louisville's doing it, Grapevine's doing it. It's heartbreaking to see the character of what is left of Old Town is just being taken away. And I have a lot of heart invested to it, so I just wish that you all would just come pay a little visit to our shops, and just the stories that people come in. I have a lot of people that come in and share things that they would probably not do. And I mean, it's just a very special place. I wish y'all would come visit. But anyway, I'll wrap up here. And I don't think that moving the church, I think that's going to, again, that's not Old Town. Old Town is where we are. I would just certainly ask that you would reconsider this, because for the benefit of Coppell. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Angela Lancaster, followed by Chris Long.
Hello, I'm Angela Lancaster.
Maybe Joe Shirley. Okay, sorry.
That's all right. I live at 1006 Forestwood. I'm here as a longtime Coppell citizen. I've been here 25 years. I'm also the president of Coppell Youth Soccer Association. We are the organization that is officed out of that church annex building, and we are currently the only tenant. We've been there probably 30 years in that building. I came along 19 years ago, and we had been there well before that. I know we are the small fish in this scenario, but we love that old building, and we're opposed to it being rezoned. As a citizen, I love the feel that the older structures give to the Old Town area. I mean, it's called Old Town for some reason. The rest of Coppell has gone like McMansion-ish. It just has, the entire city. But we don't have to tear down all the old places just because we can. Even if the building is moved, the portion that cannot be moved is the entire space that CYSA currently utilizes. And obviously, as part of the leadership of CYSA, we love our old building's character. It's unique. It fits the job for us perfectly. It's bare bones, which makes it very cheap. It's roomy, and we utilize it well. It provides office space, storage space, and a large meeting room, which is almost impossible to find around this city, for our board and coach meetings every month. If that building goes, we're out of luck. We can't afford anything else. I don't think such a thing is that inexpensive anywhere in this city. Coppell has a history of building new retail and having it sit empty for years. In Old Town alone, the Chicken Shack didn't make it, and it sits empty. Frost Cupcakery, it didn't make it, empty. And the Cajun restaurant that was across from Twisted Root sat empty for years until Tangerine Salon finally moved over there. So I would suggest, my opinion is to fill the spots that we have instead of building new places. And I would figure that would take a while. What's left of the history of this city, let's keep it. It's just this small designated area. Don't tear down all the character. Once this church and its old education building goes, it's just a matter of time till all of the old history goes with it. This kind of building provides good spaces for some, like our organization, that we serve thousands of families in Coppell out of. And it's a really cool building. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. There are a lot of Chris's. Chris Long, Chris Collins? Okay, sorry. Chris Long? Yes. Sorry, my bad. And then followed by Joe Shirley.
My name is Chris Long, and I am president of the Historical Society in Coppell. And I think on both sides, you're going to find I'm going to say something a little different, but here's what I will tell you. We operate the park at the corner of South Coppell and Bethel, Heritage Park. We operate the Minyard store, which is a wonderful 30s store, the Kirkland House, which is 1904. We have the Carrick House, which the Carrick that spoke to you today, I donated to our park. And so we are in the process, and what we do is we save old buildings. That's what we do. So having said that, let me say this. I need to correct one thing. Jean Murph's house will not be moved to the village if we do that. She has decided she doesn't want it down there, so let's just take that kind of out of the equation. And I just need to say that for clarification. Do I want the church moved? No, I do not. Okay. But from where I'm sitting, there's a reality here that piece of property and an owner has the right to sell it. and they have the right to sell it for, I think, around $1 million, I think. So what we're left with is we're left with a building that, yes, it was dedicated by the congregation in 1948. Prior to that, a church stood on that spot of 1901. When they tore down the 1901 building, which was torn down by the congregation, and the new building was built by the congregation, they put a lot of the wood from the 1901 building in the 1948 building. So I say all that to say this. The building is important to a lot of people. Richard Lee, who you may know, who used to be the fire chief, he talks about going to Sunday school there, and that was his church. And you talk to Clay Phillips, and his grandfather was the lead carpenter on building that church in 1948. So you've got all of these family ties. So we're looking at a building, and we're looking at a seller who can sell it, a developer who has the right to develop it, and we don't want the church torn down. So I agree that moving it is not as good as keeping it right there, but we did come up with a plan to move it down in front of the senior center with some other little houses, and I do not know, no idea if the city council will approve that or not. That's certainly not within my purview. But what it would do is it would preserve the building, number one. Number two, and I think equally as important, interestingly enough, is it would be an inexpensive place that some people could go. And I'll give you an example. I tried to rent a room, in Coppell, Texas. We were having the grand opening of the Minyard store. I needed a room for about 2 hours. We're a nonprofit, and my rate as a nonprofit at the Art Center was $1,000 for 2 hours. I don't begrudge them making their budget. Then I went to the senior center, about the same. What I'm suggesting is that when we look at developments, so I guess I'm really saying that, Chris has the right to develop this, and we hope that we will be able to move these buildings. But at the end of the day, I can't stand up here and say that I'm opposed to what he's doing, because he has been really straight up with us. He has been fair. He has put off these meetings in order for us to try to send something before the city council. So the Historical Society is not opposed to his development. We are simply saying we would like to move the buildings. So I wanted to give you that insight in the fact that, would I rather it stay there? Sure I would. I just don't think that's terribly realistic at this point. So from the someone asked if he had talked to the Historical Society. Yes, he did. He has gone out of his way to postpone hearings, to help us, to give us money to move the church. And so I think that we're at a point where the church will either get moved or not. Somebody will develop that corner, is my take on it. So we as a Historical Society are hoping we can get the church moved, but we don't stand up here telling you that we're opposed to this development. We're not. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe Shirley, followed by Candy Sheehan.
Joe Shirley, I live at 582 Villawood Lane. I own the Bethel Road Barber Shop on the corner of Bethel and Coppell Road, diagonally across from this proposed development. I've lived here for 43 years. If I had left 43 years ago and come back today in the old, quote, Old Town area, I wouldn't be able to recognize anything, or virtually nothing. We call this Old Town, but there's virtually nothing old left there. Everything, for the most part, has been either remodeled beyond recognition, torn down, moved, or something. And I appreciate the work that Chris has done putting on this development and everything like that, but it just makes me sad to see that Old Town is just going away, period. And, it's, one of the things I thought this afternoon, what if Europe had torn down all the buildings that were built before 1948 and replaced them with new buildings? What would Europe be? And I just would like to see some of Old Town preserved as it is, and even if you move the building, it's not the same as if it's, where it was originally. And it's just, it may be inevitable that stuff has to be done, but I just think it's sad. And in reality, I think we need to maybe come up with another term for the area. If it's not going to be Old Town, maybe it needs to be Newtown Coppell. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Candy Sheehan, and she will be followed by Paula Green, who will then be followed by George Green.
Good evening. I'm Candy Sheehan, live at 321 Quiet Valley, and I, along with Joe, have been here a long time, since 1983. And I come here and I really have to share different comments than what I thought I'd say, because I'm so humbled by what our citizens have said tonight. I am humbled by our store owners and our business owners and our volunteers who think so highly of Old Coppell, Old Town. It means a lot to them, and when I was elected, that's exactly what we wanted. That's why we had a vision for Old Coppell, Old Town, was that people really thought about the history of Coppell and remembered our roots and became the heart of Coppell. And I am just so touched that what we did in the late 1990s and the 2000s have come to fruition. And I think we should all be proud of that. And Commissioner Haas has been an integral part of that for many years on P&Z. And it's through the efforts of our staff, of our commissioners, of our city council members, and our city managers that we're here tonight fighting for something that we've had a vision for. I mean, for those of us who remember Jim Witt and Clay Phillips, this was part of their vision, and we worked hard for this. And I'm with so many of you who say, as I drive in or run in or whatever to Old Coppell, to Farmers Market every Saturday, that I look to the right and I look at those old church buildings, and it just gives me pleasure. It gives me heart to know that there is a little bit of history still with us. And I do enjoy that every time. And I have gone to their shops. They don't remember me. I mean, I just go and purchase and do my thing and come out. But I have gone and gotten my hair cut across the street for years and years. At the cottage. And I kept thinking, they're next. And then, the developer says, yep, they're next. They're part of the plan. And I just love that part of Old Coppell, and there was a vision for it. And you have had previous council members and commissioners and elected officials and city managers fight for that vision. We need to keep it. Having more look-alike businesses come in wasn't the vision. It wasn't the vision many decades ago. And I just plead with you to please keep that vision for us. People have worked so hard and worked for hours and decades on this vision for Old Coppell, a historic district. Please, please, please help us keep that. And I personally, we tried to move an old church years ago, decades ago, but it's millions of dollars to move these buildings. It takes a lot of money, and we couldn't get it back then. And there's no way we can get it now. With 700 signatures, and I think I heard it was going to cost $2 million to move a couple of buildings. I didn't know it was 5. I don't know if that's what it is, but I heard it was a couple of $1 million. There's no one in this town but this city that can afford that. We couldn't do a GoFundMe for that. And I have to say, for all of us who really knew Jean Murph, it doesn't surprise me at all that she has said she don't want that building moved. I mean, she is the one who started the historical district. So, I just want to say I'm just so proud of what we have developed over the years and over the decades. And I just hope that you and this city council will keep that vision for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula Green, followed by George Green, or together.
Yes. We are always together, so that's a good thing.
My name is Paula Green, and I just want to say to you guys, I love y'all. Like, thank you. Just like Kenny said, just wow. I feel like I have new friends, new family. I feel so connected, and thank you for that. I just want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to address the council. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time. I know that as, you know, people having, you know, families and businesses and jobs, we have busy lives, and it takes a lot to come together and have meetings like this and make plans for the city that we love. So I just want to thank you for your time. I am here because I have a building at 709 South Coppell Road. It's an all-state building. I have lived in Coppell since 1986, and where did Minnie go? She beat me to Coppell by 4 years. I didn't know there was anyone that beat me here, but she did. And I remember her so much when I got here, and I always saw her running around everywhere doing all kind of crazy things. So we'll have to share more stories later, but it was nice to hear you still got that fire in you, girl. But I just wanted to share, I'm sure you guys are aware of my building. It's an all-state office. In 2011, I thought I had won the lottery because I was able to purchase that building. It was everything I ever wanted in my whole life. I'm just going to be honest. I just never thought I would ever own even a granule of dirt in Coppell. But when I was given that building by God alone, it had a contract, and it fell through by some freak thing, and they called me and said, it's yours if you want it. And I was like, wow. And I purchased it, and my whole goal was, I was just excited to be able to be a part of the history of Coppell. A lot of you don't know this, or may not know this. The mayor, the first mayor of Coppell, actually lived in that home, and that was converted into my office. So there's a lot of history there, And matter of fact, I had a man stop by about 3 years ago. He was an older gentleman, and he asked if he could come in and look at the building, and I was like, sure. Actually, he was talking to my husband, George, and he brought him in, and they were geocaching. I don't know how much you're familiar with geocache, but they were trying to find geocache, and he goes, you know what? I realized that I was standing in front of my family home. It would just caught him off guard. Like, I didn't even, like, he didn't know where he actually was until he turned around. It's like, wow, that's my family home. He came into the office, and when we bought the building, there was a shadow box that had a flag in it that was draped over someone's casket. It was a beautiful thing. It had a purple heart. It had all these things. It was literally this long, about this tall. It was beautiful. Well, it was Mr. Cosby's. It was left in the what I use as a shed in the back. This man was raised by Mr. Cosby, and he literally was taken in as, wasn't he like he didn't have parents or something?
No, Cosby's parents adopted him.
Yeah.
In the service, and Mr. Cosby raised him.
Yeah, Mr. Cosby raised him. And it was interesting. I had taken that shadow box to the local library because I knew the Cosby Library was named for that. And they said they didn't want it. And I thought, why would they not want it? Oh my gosh. Brought it back to my old house, put it back in the shed, and just left it there. And then this man just shows up out of nowhere. George goes back and he says, hold on, I've got something for you. Okay? He went and got that shadow box. This man was 85 years old?
87.
87. He was in tears. I have the video of it. He was crying his eyes out. He was so excited that he was in the home he was raised, and then he not only that, but he didn't have one thing from his dad, right? He didn't have, I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but he didn't get anything significant when he had passed away, and we were able to give him that shadow box. The only reason I'm sharing that with you is this. If you look at my property, okay, right now, and I understand that you guys looked at it recently in the past few years because you're the planning and zoning. And George and I are kind of doing this together, so we can share time here. I basically...
I don't hear him talking. I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
You know what?
I'm worse than her.
Yeah, you don't want him to start. Well...
Wait till you get a load of this Georgia accent.
Yeah. No, you're from New York.
New York.
Yeah, New York, yeah. So anyway, I don't even know where it's at. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
When you're looking at my building, and I called the city, I believe I talked to Matt. I'm pretty sure I talked to Matt or someone in his department, and told them that my gutter is touching the fence of the owner of the new home. It's not even the owner, it wasn't sold yet. They said, well, Paula, that's a civil matter now, not too bad, basically. That's how I received it. I'm an insurance agent. I said, look, that's a fire hazard. Like the fence is touching my thing. Then I talked to someone in building. I can't remember his name, but he was over the building inspections. And he said, Paula, you know what? I don't know how that structure was approved. It's supposed to be 10 feet from your property, and it's way less than that. And this isn't, I'm not coming here to talk about that tonight. I'm here to say this, is that if there is a goal to have that area, of which my heart was, to have a area of Coppell that was old and connected to our heritage, then I want that to be maintained. The shed that's in the back, last year, I became ill, and I had gotten a letter from the city, hey, you got to fix up this shed, you got to do something to the shed. And I went to him, I said, look, I've been ill, I promise you I will get to it, and my goal is that I know I need to, do some repairs to it. In the meantime, due to the drainage, it got flooded when it's rained the past few times with the grade. I'm not here for that, but all I have to say is this, okay? The shed that I'm doing repairs on right now, they did play dominoes in that shed, okay? Along with when they were at the post office, when it rained, I assumed they would go into that shed and play dominoes. When we just got the letter from the city, George and I were like, hey, I said, honey, they're saying tear it down or repair. And so we looked at both, and it would have been a lot cheaper to cut it down, just tear it down. But my husband said, you know what, Paula? He said, there were some men that gave their blood, sweat, and tears and had a good old time at night, and we'd run in here and play dominoes. And he said, you know what? We're going to restore it. Not restore it, but repair it, because that's the right thing to do. That's what I'm asking you guys. You need to do the right thing. This is not the right thing. What you are doing, what you're making the decision for, I want you to ask yourself, what is the right thing? The heart was exactly as my fellow citizens said. Our heart at that time was to make this a historical district where we could come back and talk about old times and have the 87-year-old men come in and say, wow, I was raised here and this is so cool. I mean, we all were in tears when that guy came by. And now, when I was even considering to tear the shed down myself, I was like, George was like, Paula, you can't do that. Like this means something. So I just am asking from the bottom of my heart to reconsider, there has to, you guys are smart people. There's a way to work this out. I mean, apparently people have money to invest in it. Maybe invest in that lot and donate it. Give it back to the city that you love and have lived in. Don't build another 2 or 3 story building where you've got a 1941 build like mine, and I've got to sit there and now I have to take my trash cans and go all the way around the building to take my trash because I've got a 2 story, 0 lot line right at my doorstep. It's wrong. What would you do if I told you tonight that when you take your trash out, you got to walk all the way around your house and you got to walk all the way back to take trash?
George.
You think you're crazy.
George, I need you to stay on focused here.
Anyway, my name's not George. It's Paula, and I don't appreciate that. So
Paula.
I accept your apology.
I'll take over here.
All right.
Okay, I moved here in 2015. I'm from Georgia, not from Louisiana, but drawings, that's beautiful drawing. But there's a lot you don't see on there. Where's the power lines? Where's all the utilities? Where's the cable TV boxes? Where's the drainage in the grade? I've been doing construction for 30 years. I see a different set of drawings that a lot of people don't see in construction. I see that we plant trees and we have power lines over them trees and they grow up into the power lines and we come in and hack them off. Go over there in South Coppell, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. She's got a red oak planted, growing up in the power line right there. Since 2015, I watched a 120-year-old oak tree get cut down. I've seen 4 pecan trees get cut down, and I've seen cement. I've seen cement just being put all over Coppell, and I see we're taking buildings and we're moving them over to this place and calling it the historic district. I'm from Georgia. That's not the historic district. Buildings stay where they're at. They stay where they're at. Fried green tomatoes, Whistle Stop Cafe. It's in Georgia, still open. 274 people is the population, but that restaurant's full every night. That's where I come from, and I see these buildings. It bothers me. It bothers me about the Domino's building, the shed she got behind her. Yes, it's old. Yes, it looks bad, but I went in there, and the men that built that place, I believe they milled it right there. That church, the congregation, prayed over that building. They built it right there. The grading and everything on these buildings, I know about grades. I know why our property gets flooded, because it's grade. Those pictures are perfect. That's not what you actually happens out there. But I know too what it does when you get populations. 1981, population was like 3,500 here in Coppell. You're at 42,000. What does it do to everything around here? Yes, it's all about the money, but yet what's it doing to the atmosphere? The smog, all the pollution that's coming in, all the utilities. Where's the water going? Why are bobcats and coyotes out there in your front yard when you come out your door every morning? Why are they out there? They don't have no place to go. We've took the fields and everything away. But to sit there and move a building and move it to another place and call it historic district, no. I mean, history needs to stay where it's at. And I'm a big believer in that. And I live in a little town in Georgia. It's like Mayberry. Everybody knows your name. If you keep growing like this, what's going to happen 30 years from now? What are we doing for the future of our kids right here? You keep growing, I'm going to tell you, everybody's going to start doing, they're going to move to the suburbs. They're going to start going away from the city. You're taking away. I mean, I was shocked when I came here, and everybody's got privacy fences. That really blew my mind. It's like, y'all don't like each other? I mean, but I'm fine. I'm finished.
Thank you to the Greens, and my apologies.
I forgive you.
Okay.
It's all good.
All right.
And you know what?
Thank you.
God bless you. God bless every one of you. I pray that you truly hear our heart, because I am speaking from my heart. I
Yep.
didn't have anything written. I found out about this about 45 minutes ago. So I want you to know from my heart to yours, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so those are the names on the pink sheet. Okay. There are several names on the green sheet, folks that had signed up that maybe didn't want to speak but wanted to be recognized. Mike Luden, Ryan, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I can't read it. Ryan begins with an F, last name F. Linda Black and Nancy Dugan. So are any of those names that wanted to speak? Okay. So this is a public hearing. I see one person that'd like to speak. Anybody else that'd like to speak, please raise your hand so I can be looking for you. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jeff Varnell. I live at 1601 East Sandy Lake Road and office at 549 East Sandy Lake Road, about a mile apart. Been before you before. Probably know more about live work than anybody in this town. Y'all do too. Y'all come to learn a lot about it. I appreciate all the work that you do. I'm gonna give a little bit different perspective here. Probably own 3 businesses in this town, and I've been here 32 years myself. Nobody loves Coppell more than I do. I'm here to support our city staff and what they're proposing here on this, and Mr. Collins on this development. First of all, I'd like to say what a good job he's done to enhance the appearance of Old Town, to make that it's a replica of Old Town. We're not trying to keep every building in Old Town as it was originally constructed. The quality of development that he is proposing to bring here is going to be good. It's going to bring a lot more people to Old Town. The architect on this project, Mr. Franca, I've worked with Mr. Franca personally, and I've seen his work. He's got a lot of work in and around this town. He was on this commission before even. He sat on this commission. We all love this town. We all want the best for this town. As I said, I own 3 businesses here, and all 3 of those businesses are a member of the Coppell Chamber. I was on the board of the Coppell Chamber from 2013 to 2020. I was the chairman in 2019. Of all 8 years that I was on the board of the chamber, I was on the executive board. The executive board makes the decisions that are recommended to the board, board of directors. We were faced, we housed in Mr. Chaddock's building. We had lots of negotiations with Mr. Chaddock. We tried to buy the building, could not work out a deal. It was not meant to be. I remember, I've spent a lot of time in that building. I've spent a lot of time in the building. The building is deficient. The building is got holes in the floor. It's got foundation problems, HVAC problems. It had leaks. The building is old. It's certainly not historic. If that building was worth having, the chamber would have bought it. Okay, but we built across the street in Main Street. So move the building, don't move the building. That's another story. But as far as I can tell you, I've been in that building. It needs a lot of work if you want to bring it up to the standards. I mean, if the same city inspectors that come around my property went in that property, they would condemn it. Those same city inspectors. Okay, I got a lot of experience with them. A lot. So I'm just going to tell you that Mr. Collins, he's done a good job. He's always done what he said he's going to do. And we've always worked together in this town with people with different, varying opinions and understandings. All come to grow as a community together. All 40,000+ of us, and the city's done a great job. They've been working on this deal for over almost a year now, and I know they've done a wonderful job in doing this. I appreciate y'all's consideration. There is always 2 sides to the story. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there any questions by the commission of the applicant? Okay.
Well, we'll ask a question. Mr. Franca, have you done any market study of this area to see how saleable any of these buildings are?
I think that would be more of a developer question. But And I've lived here 30 years now. And my perception, not market study, is you have to get people down there to support the retail, people to support the restaurants. The restaurants alone, unless it's a destination restaurant like Heart 8, people will come. When I used to sit in downtown office tower on the 50th floor, I said, I live in Coppell. People would say, I love that place. I got off the plane, I came there. It's a destination place. Nothing else down there is a destination place. They're convenience places. Same with the retail. Nobody's going to drive from Dallas, maybe except for the tattered style. Nothing else is going to bring people down there. You have to get the people there. And what's going to bring them, in my opinion, is office space. Then when you're in the office space, well, I need to go to lunch. I need to go get something for the house or a gift or something. My non-researched opinion. We started with 5 buildings with commercial, with residential on top, 1 retail, but the 2000 city goal is to put more retail down there. So we agreed to change buildings 4 and 5 from office to retail to work with the city and the goals of the city. Now, whether those sell first or sell last, let the market dictate which building sells first. Somebody wants to face Bethel Road with a commercial office space, that one gets built first, and so on and so forth. But, and back, we were talking earlier about the restaurant use. Well, right now, building 3 is retail, 1 space per 200 feet. So if we go restaurant on the bottom, residential on top, that parking doesn't change, as from an earlier comment. So we don't, go back through PD, but the parking doesn't change. Okay. So there is some flexibility in those buildings to change for a higher density to a lower parking ratio, back and forth. But I'll let the owner talk about
I just want to get some clarity around your question. Are you talking about the proposed buildings or the existing buildings?
I'm talking about which is the best set of buildings for the economics of Old Town.
Okay, so that I can speak to.
Okay.
So we've talked about the restaurants and the businesses that have come and failed. That's not good for any city. I started in real estate in the mortgage business, and the foreclosure rate in a community drives the property values down, drives the quality of living down. The same thing is when you have a closed building. I loved Quincy's Chicken Shack. It was great for the 90 days, 120 days it was open. The size of, I'm going to talk about the economics of square footage. When you have a large business in a large building starting out, the building value is going to dictate your tax rate, which is going to put the overhead higher, which means a cash register has to ring constantly to get those bills paid. There's a difference. I'm going to use the analogy of a hobby business and a business that is trying to support a household, car payments, mortgage payment, utilities for both the house and a family. It's very difficult if you look at the larger buildings, the restaurants. We have multiple restaurant failures in Coppell that are rooted in the economics of the square footage, that if they're leasing, they're paying the triple net, so they're paying their taxes. And so our goal is to build a smaller building so that the cost is more advantageous for a business, adding the living component as we went through the live-work scenarios when we were looking at the other project. When someone can consolidate a $2,500 a month house payment with a $2,000 a month hair salon rental for a stall at a hair salon, and have the opportunity to add 2 or 3 incomes to their business and combine that, they can qualify to pay those things. The financing obviously is what dictates being able to sell it. We're trying to stay away from tenancy because we know what that ends up creating. Turnover, business failure. We had a great restaurant here. Landlord said, hey, you're doing good. Rent's going up. They shut it down. This is a cycle that we're trying to break by building a building that can be afforded, office versus residential, then adding the office versus retail. If you have a large retail shop, I've been to Dana's store. I haven't been in yours. I would love to come check it out. But the fact that their stores are smaller and they can run them in a boutique style makes them financially viable. Dana and I had some conversations about things that could be done with the church, such as restoring it and having rental stalls where people could sell their products. The problem is the economics. If we don't solve the economic problem, we will constantly see a turnover in Old Town. There needs to be a balance of the services provided to the citizens. Bennett Ratliff built 3 buildings called Founders Crossing. They have constantly been occupied. When Bennett decided to move and put that building on the market, he immediately pulled it off because somebody said, no, I want to buy it. So the economics of those types of buildings that a business, especially, we've had such a huge change in our society. Post-COVID, things are different. The economics that we're living in today are completely different than we've ever seen. So yes, the business model set up in 2002 is very difficult in the economics that we're seeing today. I bought a house in Coppell for $165,000, and today it's on the tax rolls at 4.25. You know, it's an issue. But to create the ownership possibility for businesses, that a business, the Frost Cupcake Factory is a perfect example in Old Town. It was considered a retail. I don't know if that's a restaurant or how it's looked at, but it's an office now. Someone who was paying an absorbent amount of rent for a number of employees purchased the building and is using it for their office, and it's viable. He's not going anywhere. I know that may not be the exact desire of the master plan, but it's the direction Coppell has gone. I drove down Sandy Lake. Who would have ever thought we were going to have 25 years ago an Islamic center? The dynamics of our city have changed, and we're changing with it. We are trying to preserve. We're trying to work out solutions, but economics are ultimately going to dictate that. We do currently have 2 people interested. In fact, I have someone that wanted to wait till after this hearing before they meet us tomorrow to go over a design. One of the groups that is looking is Livestream. They have a doctor who is operating out of their practice, and their practice is growing, and they've asked for the first right of refusal for the building next to Livestream so that they can they refer back and forth. And so that is the growth that we're trying to create with what the building product we're building is a sustainable Old Town without vacancies.
Okay, thank you.
So, got a hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say this goes down tonight. Let's say the whole thing goes down throughout the whole process. What is, let's see, the owner is Chadwick?
Chadwick Capital? Yes.
Oh, maybe I ought to ask him. What is his next steps? What the structure stay there? I don't know. You own the property.
So he owns the property, and we're under contract, and we have a feasibility period, which you hear us talking about extending. And so he and I are in an agreement to continue to extend this until we come up with a resolution. And as soon as the resolution's made, when the project's approved and we're ready to go, then I'm going to be purchasing the property from the Chadwick estate.
Okay.
I don't want to pay the price for it and have an old church, because then I'll find a church to donate it to, and they're going to rate it as a nonprofit. I was competing, as you hear in the multiple offer situation, with a church that wanted to purchase the building and use it as a church, but the dynamics of that transaction didn't sound like it was really going to work out, But the effect that would have on the city of Coppell is we would have a church in Old Town, and $1 million piece of real estate would be tax exempt and would become a liability on the city economically. So I believe in our conversations with Mr. Chaddock, his dad had a plan, had a vision for Old Town for the property when he bought it. And the reason that Mr. Chaddock chose out of the multiple offers to go with me was because of my vision for Coppell, being a local and a local developer. That's
Thank
why
you.
we're here today.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as I turn this green sheet to the side, it might be Ryan Franklin. Is Mr. Franklin here? Ryan? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your passion for the input tonight. I have been somewhat on the fence on this one since walking the area. Literally spending time out there walking. So I come at it from two perspectives. I understand the heart and soul of our community. Totally get it. And every way we should try to preserve it, we should try to do that. But I think about the owner of this property and what's he going to do if the whole thing is denied all the way through council. What is he faced with? He wants to do something with his property. He's trying to stay within the boundaries or the vision of the historic district. He's put together a package, and I see that. And so I'm trying to weigh the benefits here. It's akin to saying, well, golly, my house over by St. Anne, that should be as it is, and someone else can deal with it. We can, because of the land use element and his rights, and he's staying within the prescribed design parameters for the historic district, which aligns with the vision, which aligns with the vision of the community. I have to give some balance there to that request. I was initially concerned, and I still am concerned with the density of it. It's just a little too much in my mind. I think that can get addressed. But I do sincerely appreciate the passion tonight, both from what was initially prepared from all those planning initiatives to where we are now, and what we're trying, and what is trying to happen as part of Old Town. So I have to weigh those two together. And what would the next proposal be? Okay, I heard one scenario. Maybe it's a church, but could be other scenarios. So I'm still contemplating those two things. I am satisfied on some of the elements. The traffic, I don't think traffic's going to be an issue. I do think it creates a new impetus for how the other quadrants of the intersection might develop. I saw some of the imagery, looked back at some of the old plans in pre-session, what was some of the graphic illustrations of what was some of the vision there. And I believe in one of the images, you're looking down this Coppell Road at the intersection, and you can kind of see the church to the right, but you see another structure right there. So even in the planning there was some thinking of something else going on there. So, yeah, it's a tough one, no question. In my mind, it's a tough one. I'll reserve the right to come back and make final comments, but anybody else from the commission?
I want to thank all of you for your heartfelt comments. I mean, this is clearly one of those things where it is kind of depressing you know, to see part of what once was go away. But at some point, the dirt becomes more expensive than what's built on it. And the economics dictate that you just simply, you have to recognize that the gentleman or the family or whoever owns that property has a right to sell it. And I'm not comfortable telling them that they don't. You know, our country's built on free property ownership, private property ownership, and someone owns that piece of property, and right now the dirt's worth a whole lot more than the structures on top of it. And it's just a fact of life, and as things change and develop over time, what happens to real estate and what happens with respect to the economics of an area. You know, I don't like the fact that it's this precious old church. You know, there's a lot of prayer offered up in that building. But the bottom line is I'm not comfortable telling someone that they can't sell it for whatever the market's going to bring. They have that right. It's a fundamental right every one of you have with respect to the property that you own, that you cherish so much. You know, and then you look at the person that wants to buy it. I mean, this could be a very different scenario. I mean, this guy's coming in, he's trying to make peace with the historic society. He's trying to design it in a way that comports with the rest of the area. You know, he's trying to do the best that he can, but if he has a willing seller and he's a willing buyer, I'm not comfortable telling him that he can't buy it. Any more than I would want anyone telling me that I couldn't sell our home or that someone couldn't buy it. You know, I moved here in '98. Built 2 homes here, one in 98 and one in 2007 that we live in now. I should have a right to sell that property to someone that wants to come in and move into it as a home. And this is a little bit different because it's not a home, it's not in a residential area, there's not all sorts of restrictions governing what can exist on that lot. But this is not that way. This is a piece of commercial real estate, and it's become very valuable. And the people that own it want to sell it. And they found a willing buyer who's gracious enough and generous enough and caring enough about the community to at least try to accommodate, you know, the concerns that all of you have, the concerns that Chris has. You know, maybe there is something that can be done to relocate all this. To create some kind of village that at least preserves a sense of our history, right? It's not going to be the same thing. She makes a wonderful point. He makes a wonderful point. It's not the same thing. But it's not completely lost. And maybe that's the best that can be accomplished, you know, today, given the situation. And there's going to come a day and a time when every one of you is going to want to sell your property. And you're going to have a willing buyer. And that willing buyer may have a goal or a thought about your property that's different than what you've cherished all these years. And I'm not going to tell you that you can't sell it. And, you know, if the willing buyer's coming in and he's doing something that comports with what's going on in the rest of that area, and there's nothing illegal about it, there's nothing that violates an ordinance about it, I don't want to tell that person that they can't buy it either. So, you know, as tough and as depressing as it is sometimes to see precious old buildings, you know, get lost, you know, over the course of time, it's just the way that things work sometimes. And unfortunately, that's the way it's going to work this time if this gets approved and if it goes to council, and all of y'all are going to have another, you know, chance to lend your voices to that proceeding. You know, what we do here is a recommendation. It's not the final decision. And so everyone gets to take another shot at influencing, you know, folks that were elected to office. I was just appointed. I just applied and got in, you know. But I'm going to approve this because I respect the right of the person that owns it to sell it, and I respect the right of a gentleman that's come in and tried to do everything he can to show good faith to the community and to the historical society and to the neighbors to design it and build it in a way that at least comports with what's already there. And I give you my word that I'll do the same thing for you if your property is up for sale and you've got a willing buyer and you want to do the same thing. So I'm going to approve it for that reason.
Anybody else? Ed?
First, I reiterate everyone's comments in terms of the passion everyone shows. I mean, that's what makes this community amazing to live in, is the people that are sitting in this room and, spending their time, 9 o'clock at night talking about, issues. And you probably don't see this in a lot of other larger cities. And so it's amazing to see. I think thinking about this and coming into the meeting, the challenges with situations like this are it takes a lot of proactivity and unfortunately a lot of money to preserve structures and areas, and the challenge is sometimes the timing just gets in the way of how things are developed. When it gets to this point, as the other commissioners are saying, as a taxpayer, property owner, they have the right to propose development of property, which in many cases includes removing structures, and they have the right to do that. But I echo Jim's comments of it's a difficult decision, but you wish in a situation like this there was some of the important areas that have a lot of the heart and soul of Coppell would have been addressed earlier, and funds raised to move those into a historic society before it would get to this point. If it is if they represent the importance level of for the community, and so, but I do think that this could be developed in lots of other ways that wouldn't necessarily be as collaborative, should I say, as the proposal today from a design standpoint, from a use standpoint, from the working with the historical society. I mean, this is the proposal that we're looking at, but it's there's been a lot of collaboration. So as a part of this committee, we have to recognize that, and ultimately, as it was stated at the beginning of the meeting, we're looking at the zoning of this, and specifically the whether or not to rezone it now, and not specifically looking at what should happen to these structures, or the future of these structures, or commenting on the importance of it. So I think that's part of the point we want to get across. To we're not, by voting to approve this, we're not taking away the importance of the structures. We're just voting on the zoning. Unfortunately, the zone, if you want to put something on a property, on this property, the concept plan would require removing what's on the property. And so, that's just the reality of the situation. But, ultimately, it never ceases to amaze me sitting up here listening to the passion of everyone of this community, and on all the issues as it relates to how things are developed. That's why it's a great community, and so that's why we all love living here. So I thoroughly appreciate everyone coming out and hearing the thoughtful words.
Anybody else? Sue?
I'd like to really, truly applaud the passion and emotion expressed here tonight. I personally support your emotion and your passion regarding the historical significance of these buildings, But as commissioners, we're here to vote on land use, and and that's what I personally will be voting on tonight is land use, and not whether we're taking the house down, I mean, taking down the buildings and structures or moving the buildings or structures. I'll be voting on the land use. And I'd like to echo all the other commissioners tonight, their sentiments too. So, thank you.
Since the rest of the commissioners talk, I have to say something, right? So, but I too echo the comments of the other commissioners. It's been so tough, and I've been thinking about this ever since we got our package, you know, and I couldn't decide how I was going to come out on this, and everybody's comments were great, and it's been the toughest decision I've had to make. I think I'm the most junior person on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this has been a really tough decision, and I'm not convinced that this ratio of office and retail and with the residential on the top is going to work, but I'm not the expert here, and that's not my call. Time will tell, I guess, how that's going to work out, but as Commissioner Blankenship said, we're here to talk about land use and vote on land use, and I think I'm going to vote in favor of it as well. So, thank you.
So, to the commissioners, one more thought here. Is there a better proposal in your mind? Think about that. This is a nice package. The applicant has been doing his due diligence. I hear collaboration going on, but I'm asking out loud. Don't answer out loud, but in your mind, do you feel like there's something better out there? I'm still wrestling with that. So, I mean, I like it, but there's some things I wish I could change, but I'm not the developer. I'm focused on land use, but I'm in my mind asking, is there something that could be better about the package?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think clearly there could be better things. But sitting up here on the Planning Commission since 2006, this is the best thing that's been proposed recently for Old Town since its inception. And I don't see somebody else coming out and spending the kind of money the applicant here is willing to spend to improve the Old Town area. And the area needs something. It clearly needs something. I feel distressed a little bit because my university degree is in history, and we could lose some buildings if the city council decides to accept this proposal. But we deal with land use, make a recommendation to council, council makes the decision. They also make the decision if they're spending public money to do anything with respect to moving buildings, dealing with the historical society, doing things with the senior center property. We got no right to make those decisions. As far as a land use concept, this thing is on the table, and there's somebody with the money and the approval and the contract to go forward. And going forward with Old Town right now is probably the best solution. As a result of that, I'm going to move that we approve the proposal, subject to all of the conditions, and let the city council decide if it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas. Commissioner.
Wait. I'm going to disapprove?
Commissioner Mauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker, and Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
5 for and 1 against. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. This is a hard one. No question, it's a hard one. Okay. As we move on our agenda item, item 8 is consider approval of Main Street Old Town Addition preliminary plat. A preliminary plat to create a total of 7 lots, 1 parking lot, 6 mixed-use lots, associated easements, and fire lane configuration on 0.946 acres of property located on the southwest corner of Main Street and West Bethel Road at the request of Chaddock Capital and Chaddock Management, being represented by B&D Surveying, Inc., and the developer, Chris Collins. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Mary Peron Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Commissioners. This is item 8, Main Street Old Town preliminary plat. So it is a preliminary plat, essentially lays out the configuration of the site. What you do see on the preliminary plat is the existing buildings as it lays out within the site. Those would have to be removed at some point in time with the final plat. Lot 7X has no street frontage and would be allowed only as a parking lot. So staff is recommending approval of Main Street Old Town Addition lots 1 through 6 and 7X Block A preliminary plat, subject to the following conditions. 1, additional comments may be generated upon detailed engineering permit reviews. 2, the final plat cannot be filed until buildings have been removed and zoning is approved. 3, lot 7X shall only be used for parking. 4, an access easement is required between lot 7X and the city of Coppell before the plat can be filed. 5, the plat must become a part of the Old Town POA before the plat can be filed. That is the end of my presentation.
Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay. Is there a motion by the commission?
I'll go ahead and move for approval. I'm sorry, go to the first slide, Mary. I'll move for approval of the Main Street Old Town preliminary plat as proposed.
With the conditions as presented?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, with the conditions as presented.
Okay, very good. We have a motion by Commissioner Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bishop.
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Nay.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
All righty. Item 9 on the agenda is to consider approval of Main Street Old Town final plat. Final plat to create a total of 7 lots, 1 parking lot, 6 mixed-use lots, associated easements, and fire lane configuration on 0.946 acres of property located at the southwest corner of Main Street and West Bethel Road at the request of Chaddock Capital and Chaddock Management, being represented by B&D Surveying, Inc., and developer Chris Collins. Staff presentation by Ms. Mary Peron Boswell. Mary?
So again, this is a companion item to the last 2 items. This would be the final plat, which aims to lay out the configuration of the site, various proposed lots, access, utility layouts, and associated easements. If the PD is approved, the next step would be, you would have to file the final plat in order to allow for construction. One exception, again, being requested with this plat is to allow for lot 7X to be allowed without any street frontage, and access would be provided via an access easement to the city-owned parking lot, access to Hammond and Houston Street. Lot 7X is specifically used for a parking lot. So staff is recommending approval of the Main Street Old Town Addition, Lot 1 through 6, 7X, Block A, final plat, subject to the following conditions. 1, additional comments may be generated upon detailed engineering permit reviews. 2, the final plat cannot be filed until buildings have been removed and zoning is approved. 3, Lot 7X shall only be used for parking. 4, an access easement is required between Lot 7X and the city of Coppell before the plat can be filed. 5, the property must become part of the Old Town POA before the plat can be filed as well. And that is the end of my presentation.
All righty, thank you, Mary. Any questions of staff by the commission?
Just a quick question, Mary. On the access easement in the back, is there, looking at the final plat, is the easement across both access points?
Yes.
Or just the one, both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Any other questions by the commission of staff? Okay, any discussion? And is there a motion?
I'll move for approval of the Main Street Old Town final plat, subject to all staff conditions as indicated.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Marr. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay. I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman. Aye. Chairman Haas.
Nay.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 10 is update on city council actions. Matt or Mary, do we have an update on council action?
No.
All righty.
Just happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay. And welcome aboard again to commission members Bishop, Walker, and I believe it's Guerra. Yes, who were on the reappointment for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that, the time is 9:36, and I will adjourn the meeting.